now available in paperback and e-readers. Spellbound, A Darker Shade of Black. Get your copy today at your favorite online bookseller. Historical Men in Crisis. Now, Ifikhtar Ahmed is infamously known for taking the life of his 17-year-old daughter, Shafia Ahmed, in the United Kingdom on September 11th of 2003, when she decided to refuse to participate in an arranged marriage that he had set up. And Ifikhtar Ahmed basically looked to set up that marriage between his daughter, who had been westernized in the UK, and another relative in Pakistan, all to look to maintain what I call a smooth world in my book, The Man Crisis. Now, Ifikhtar Ahmed was a man in crisis ever since he was a little boy, because he was raised with a whole ideal of being a part of Western culture, and because he wanted to be a part of Western culture, he wanted to live the way people in the West do. Unfortunately, he wound up with a major conflict as related to his family, as related to religion. And because he had a conflict with his family as related to his westernized beliefs, which contrasted those of his family in Pakistan, he wound up on the road to becoming a man in crisis due to his efforts to try to make a smooth world as related to looking to please and appease family members who were in Pakistan. Now, Ifikhtar Ahmed basically was born in the village of Uttam in the Gujarat district of Pakistan and was a native Punjabi speaker who was a follower of the Sunni religion, and he basically was living that life until his family migrated to the United Kingdom when he was 10 years old. Now, he worked in a biscuit or a cookie factory when he was in college and was out here getting an education in the West. And as he was getting this education in the West, he had assimilated into Western culture, into Western culture so much that he basically had become a part of living that social life, to the point where he migrated to Denmark on a student visa and went to a party as he was going to school. And this is where he met his first wife, a Danish woman named Vivi Lone Anderson, who was a Christian. And even though he had these religious beliefs as related to Islam, he wanted to get involved with this white woman, which is something that people who are a part of the Eastern Asian cultures usually don't participate in. They usually don't go out here and marry people of different religions. But Ifikhtar Ahmed basically wanted to assimilate into Western culture and eventually wound up marrying this woman, Vivi Lone Anderson, in 1980 in a civil ceremony, and eventually wound up having a son named Tony. Now, as he was building his family in Western culture in Denmark and the UK, he basically was having issues with his family that didn't accept this relationship with this white woman. Now, he managed to maintain an amicable relationship between himself and his family until about 1985, when he had to return to Pakistan due to the passing of his mother. And it was when he was in Pakistan that he wound up further on the road to becoming a man in crisis, because instead of looking to stand by the Western culture he assimilated in, he looked to submit to the authority of family members who wanted to force him into an arranged incestuous marriage with a cousin who threatened to commit suicide if he refused to marry her. Now, this whole situation was one that led to Ifikhtar Ahmed being a man in crisis, because this crisis, as related to looking to try to save the life of this relative, basically put him on the road of that many beta males wind up on, where they look to submit to female authority figures, and this man basically being in a stressed condition as related to the death of his mother, basically was not having his head in a right place, because the passing of a mother is very devastating to any man, and again is one of those things that really hurts a man. But to have this put on this man, where they're arranging a incestuous relationship with a cousin to be able to maintain their smooth world as related to religion, basically was the thing that started putting Ifikhtar Ahmed on the road to becoming a man in crisis, because after he wound up submitting to that wedding, he basically would look to look to return to the UK, and asked his wife to move in with them without telling his wife that he was having a second wife. And that's where Ikhtar Ahmed's life basically further deteriorated. It further deteriorated because as he wound up looking to put these two lives together, what happened was his first wife got so upset as related to him looking to have a family with this other woman as a second wife, as related to their religion, where polygyny was perfectly fine. But the whole thing was that this Christian woman found this offensive to her because in her eyes this was adultery, and this was adultery because to her this was a betrayal of her religious beliefs. But at what happened with the woman, Vivi Lone Anderson, is that she got so disgusted as related to him talking about this arranged marriage and having children with this other woman that was his cousin, that she wound up packing and leaving a month that she entered the country. And eventually Vivi Lone Anderson looked to raise her son without him, and just fell out of contact with him until Ikhtar Ahmed told him that she was going to have a daughter. And eventually, after telling her that, again, she cut off all contact. And again, as Ikhtar Ahmed had married this cousin for Ranza, eventually he wound up distancing himself from that westernized culture, and distanced himself from that westernized culture basically because he wanted to have that smooth world as related to looking to please and appease the members of his family. And that's where the whole issue of the so-called honor is as related to this religion. What the honor is isn't really honor as related to honoring God. No, it's basically about maintaining a smooth world for the men in that community, maintaining a smooth world where they have no conflicts, problems, or obstacles as related to things in their lives. And they believe that having that smooth world is more important than the family as related to the relationships that they have with their children. And sadly, when the case of Shafia is that she wound up in a home where she basically wound up becoming abused. Now, Shafia was born in 1986, and the family lived in England. And as she lived in England, Shafia was a very smart girl who hoped to become a solicitor, but sadly was physically and emotionally abused by Ikhtar Ahmed. And I believe that he basically abused his daughter because he was taking out all of his anger and frustration about having to maintain this smooth world as related to his religion, and angry and frustrated that he could not be a part of the Western life that he enjoyed in the past with Vivi Lone Anderson. He basically wanted to live that life with that white woman, but because he wanted to please his family, he submitted to his family, looking to honor his family. But that honor really wasn't about honor. It was just about maintaining a smooth world where Ikhtar Ahmed would have no problems, conflicts, or obstacles with his family, and felt possibly scared about losing the connections to his family because he wanted to be out here staying with his family because that's what he felt all he had. But sadly, his needs to stay in as related to keeping the honor of his family, or really the smooth world of his family, led to this girl being abused. And again, subconsciously, this man was taking his anger out on his daughter, and the cousin was taking the anger out. And Shafia said that she had suffered so much abuse, she applied to foster care, saying that one parent would hold me while the other would hit me at 15 years old. And this girl sadly suffered to the point where she felt so hopeless that she swallowed bleach in a suicide attempt. Now, the parents basically denied this and said that she made a mistake of drinking bleach during a power outage, thinking it was mouthwash. But who would drink mouthwash during a power outage? This was just abuse, plain and simple. And this girl wanted to escape because she had no hope. Because as she grew up in westernized culture, she wanted to be like the other white and non-black and black women in the UK. She wanted to go and be able to live a life where she could have that freedom that Western women had. Unfortunately, because her father was so desperate to maintain his smooth world, he basically was so strict on his daughter that he basically wound up suffocating his daughter as related to her personal life, and wound up suffocating her because sadly he was angry about the state of his own life. He couldn't have the success that he wanted. I mean, he was a taxi driver and his wife was a housewife. I mean, he was a guy who was going to university. In his early years, he was living very well and in the West and had that family. But when he couldn't have the family that he wanted, what he did was simmer and boil in anger. And eventually, as he simmered and boiled in anger, related to the subconscious frustrations he had about not being able to live that Western life, he wound up taking all of that anger out on his daughter, who basically wanted to live the same dream that he wanted, but because he didn't have the courage to stand up and say that he would just walk away from the religion that his family believed in, and walk away from the traditions of his family, and basically be that rebel, what he did was go out and looked to take his anger out on his daughter, and took his anger out on his daughter when she decided not to submit to him, and decided not to submit to him because she had been raised in Western culture just like he did, and she wanted to live the same dream. And because she wanted to live the same dream, what he did was get upset when she said no, which is what he wanted to really say. She said no, that he wanted to say. And when he did this, this is what led to him exploding in rage, because what would happen is his smooth world was being destroyed as related to his religion and his family. And this is where he looked to murder his daughter, not out of honor, but really because he was too scared to be able to make the world rough. Now, before, when he was younger, he was looking to make the world rough and have that courage to stand. But instead of looking to stand, he looked to go out here and participate in the murder of his daughter as related to being an honor killing. And what's really troubling is that this man wound up not only taking the life of his daughter, but dismembering her body. Again, doing this to make a smooth world for things, and dumped her body in the river of Kent, in Sedgwick, Cumbria, in Warrington, and the corpse was again just deliberately hidden, and the only way they could identify her was by the jewelry that she had because of decomposition. And again, it takes a certain kind of evil to do this, and then justify it with religion. Justify it with religion when really it's not about religion, because I don't believe a good God would condone the murder of children, would not condone the murder of children, because we're supposed to love children and pass the gospel on to those children. That's what God wanted us to go out here and be fruitful and multiply. But this man really didn't want to be fruitful and bear good fruit with his children. No, what he wanted to do was maintain a smooth world as related to pleasing people, and then use religion to cover up his efforts to please people. And those people, again, are not the reason why we live. We live to serve God, and this is not serving God at all, as I see it. I mean, what happened here was, again, a man look to please people. I mean, he's out here having an arranged marriage with a cousin, again, participating in a sin as related to incest, as I see it. But the whole thing is that this whole situation, a 17-year-old girl wound up losing her life. I mean, this 17-year-old girl just wanted to wear Western clothes and be a part of the Western culture that her father put her in. And again, if this father really cared, he wouldn't have gone back to the UK. He would have just stayed in Pakistan and raised his daughter the way he says he wanted. But really what he wanted to, again, was have that looking to, again, conflicted as related to these two worlds, and wanted to try to make things smooth. But in his efforts to make things smooth, he basically destroyed the life of his daughter, as related to having her tormented in emotional and physical abuse, to the point where she wanted to be a part of the foster care system rather than be part of her family, all because this male basically was, again, looking to preserve honor in dishonorable actions that really started with him looking to be out and looking to submit to people. Again, was when he was younger, he wanted to, again, be out there with this white woman, and he didn't want to assimilate, but after the death of his mother, sadly, he wanted to go out here and assimilate, and again, looking to assimilate, and again, looking to participate in this dysfunctional situation that basically wound up destroying the life of a 17-year-old girl before she could become a woman. And as a result, Ifikhtar Ahmed basically wound up becoming a man in crisis, who again wound up making his daughter feel trapped because he himself felt frustrated and trapped as related to his own life, called his daughter a slut for dyeing her hair and wearing false nails, which is what every teenage girl does. And again, because he didn't want his daughter to, again, have basic adolescence and basically develop as a woman does in the West, he basically felt so angry about his daughter being an actual person that he sought to take away her humanity by taking her life. And after taking her life in this very cruel killing as related to destroying her life emotionally and destroying her personal life, what happened is he wound up getting his wife, who was his cousin, got arrested, and eventually, after going through the UK court system, they wound up being convicted of the murder of their daughter. And after they were convicted for the murder of their daughter, eventually both Ifikhtar Ahmed and his wife wound up in prison for the 25 years for her murder in 2012, and wound up, it took years to get them to this point because they had to do an inquest, they had to do things because they didn't find her body until February of 2004. I mean, it's really sad. Again, they have no sense of humanity to say, look, I mean, this is not honor, because this is not about honor at all. No, this was about looking to maintain a smooth world for Ifikhtar Ahmed, looking to maintain that smooth world as related to things, because all he had to do was basically disown his daughter. I mean, if your daughter wants to be a part of the West, all you have to do is disown that daughter and just cut off all contact, the same way that his family basically wound up cutting off contact from Vivi Lone Anderson and his son, Tony. I mean, all they had to do was cut off that contact the same way. They didn't have to talk about doing any sort of honor killing, because what they could have done is just basically say, I'm going to disown my daughter, send her to child services, and she can go out here and live her life, and they will just go on and have another kid. That's all they needed to do, but sadly, this man didn't want to do this because he wanted his smooth world, and his smooth world made his life real rough. And as his life became rough, he basically became another historical man in crisis. Now, if you want to learn more about what leads to men winding up on this road to dysfunction, where they're looking to make a world smooth, not understanding that life has rough patches and people have different opinions and viewpoints, and that's just the way of life, you can pick up my book, The Man Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find The Man Crisis at other online booksellers like Draft the Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. And if you'd like to see me make a historical man in crisis video regarding someone that you believe is a man in crisis, you can send a donation for a minimum of $15 to the Cash App or the PayPal. And if I know something about that person in crisis, I will make that video for you. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Spinsterella. Discover the dark side of love in this goth and lovely romance with Spinsterella. Get Spinsterella in paperback and e-readers at your favorite online bookseller today. Now available in paperback and e-readers from the author of Spinsterella, a strange and unusual romance and spellbound. The darkest shade of black comes from legendary Matilda. And get the conclusion of the Spinsterella trilogy in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers today. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.